Hello everyone, so this is a bit of a different video of what I normally do because it's targeted to probably a younger audience. You're looking at probably year 10. This is something that my sister asked me to do literally months ago and I never got around to it, and now I decided I should probably do it for her because she keeps asking me. And it is basically the difference between like ATAR and QCE and all of the different things that you need to know when it comes to that. I know it can be very confusing when you first start, especially if you don't have any older siblings or you don't really know anyone who's done like year 11 and 12 before. So I know that can be super confusing. So that is what we're going to be looking at today. So here I've got, in this little thing, I've got how we get our Queensland Certificate of Education, and then we got our ATAR here, and then I've got some websites up that I'm going to show you afterwards. Now, let's first explain what your QCE is. So a QCE is the Queensland Certificate of Education, and that's basically like your high school certificate or your high school diploma. It's what you get when you graduate high school, and every state has a different equivalent. So as you can see, this is my certificate here, and as you can see, it was given to me by the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority. So the QCAA gives you your QCE, your high school certificate. And this essentially doesn't mean or do anything other than the fact that you graduated high school and you are at like an Australian standard. So how do you actually get your QCE? So you need to get 20 QCE points. And I ended up with 29 points, I think. Yeah. I got 29 points, but you just need 20 to graduate, like officially graduate high school and get that Queensland Certificate of Education. So how do you actually get these points? Now, the most common way that you get them is through doing QCAA subjects. So that's literally like your maths, English, biology, any normal subject that you do at school. You can also get them from doing vocational education or training, and then there's some non-Queensland studies and recognised studies. So basically, you need to get the set amount of credits or points, and there's 20 of them. You can go over. It doesn't mean anything, but you can go over, and a lot of the time you naturally will. Like, I didn't mean to get 29 points. It just ended up that way, and I'll tell you how. So going over doesn't matter. You just got to get that 20 as a bare minimum to graduate. Then you need to meet a set standard. So you need to get the grade of a C or better to be able to get these points. So you don't just get given these points for completing your subjects. You actually need to pass those subjects or get a C to get your points. And you also need to do them in a set pattern. So everybody, no matter what your pathway is after school, will need to get 12 of these QCE points from core courses of study. So what are our core courses of study? I've got them down here. So you must get 12 points minimum from these core courses. So that could be a general or an applied subject, and you can get up to 4 credits. And it's because every single unit you complete and you pass will get you a credit. So you'll see down here, you have your Unit 1, your Unit 2, and then your Units 3 and 4 in Year 12 for every subject. So you have Unit 1 Biology, Unit 2 Biology, etc. And every time, it's basically a semester. Every time you pass and complete one of those units, you will get a point. Now, I did 6 subjects, and I passed all 4 units for every single one of those subjects. So I got 24 points from that. My school also made us do a unit of literature to test it out if we wanted to. So I also passed that, and I got an additional 1 point from that. So I got 25 of my points from doing core courses of study. General extension subjects also count as a core course. The C subjects also count. If you get a Cert 2, you can get 4 points. If you do a Cert 3 and 4, which includes a traineeship, you can get up to 8 points. And then a school-based apprenticeship, you can get up to 6 points. And all of those are considered core courses of study. And you must get at least 12 credits from them to go towards your QCE. Now, that means that you've got 8 left over. So you can get those 8 from any of this combination. So you can either get 8 from additional core courses of study. That's what most people do. Most people do their 5 or 6 subjects and get all of their points from that. That is okay. All of your points can be from core courses of study. You can also get 4 points maximum from preparatory courses. So I believe Yes, I believe, sorry, I should have screenshotted it better. These are our preparatory courses. So you can either do the short course in literacy or numeracy. And I will come back to that in a moment because that might be important for some of you. And you can also get them from doing a certificate 1 or other recognized studies. But again, that's up to the QCAA. So you're more likely to get your maximum of 4 points from a QCAA short course or a certificate 1. However, you need to get 8. So you can either get the rest of them from your core courses again, or you could also do complementary courses and you can have a maximum of 8 points from those complementary courses. So this here are complementary courses. Now these are different short courses. They're not the preparatory ones, but there is one in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages and then one in career education. And you could get 1 point per course of that. What you can also do is if you do a university subject whilst you're at school, you can get 2 points per course. So I did 2 university subjects. I did one through USQ and one through CQU, and I got 2 points for each of those. So that is how I got my 29 points. I got 25 points from doing regular subjects and passing all the units. And then I got an additional 4 points, 2 each, because I did a university subject. Now, if you're in year 10, honestly, definitely recommend doing one of these. They are completely free to do. They're not that bad. Most of the time, they're all online and they can give you a real insight into what you might want to do at uni. So I definitely recommend doing a uni subject if you are more academically inclined and want to go to uni after school. Definitely think it's worth it. You can also get up to 8 points by doing diplomas or advanced diplomas. Now, these uni subjects and diplomas, they must happen when the student is enrolled at school. So you can't complete year 12 and not have enough points and then go on to do subjects to boost it up. You can't do that. You have to be enrolled at school to get your QCE. Also, with these ones, with the up to 4, so up to 4 for university subjects, up to 8 for certs, that means you can't just keep doing certs and uni subjects to stack up your points. It doesn't work that way. You can only get a certain amount for each thing. So that is how you can get your 20 points to get your QCE. So to get that high school certificate. And that literally is just like proof that you graduated high school, okay? However, you don't just need the 20 points. There is actually another thing. You need to meet the literacy and numeracy requirements and get your literacy and numeracy tick. And that just means that you are competent in maths and English. And there are many different ways that you can do that, and most students will be able to do this relatively easily. So the easiest way or the most standard pathway is if you pass a general or applied English or general or applied maths, or both of them, you get your point. And you need to get 1 for literacy and 1 for numeracy. It's like a tick. Now, if you are not, like you maybe failed your general English or your maths or applied maths or whatever you did, you can actually do that short course in literacy and the short course in numeracy. And if you pass that, you'll get your tick and they'll give you a couple of points as well. You could also do the CEE subjects, or SEE, if you, if you pass those, you'll get your tick. If you do your IB, so the International Baccalaureate, if you do that exam in an approved English subject or math subject and you pass it, then you'll get that tick as well. I believe, actually I'm not sure I'm not going to say that, never mind, sorry guys. So yeah, you just got to get that literacy and that numeracy tick. Most people do it just by passing a maths or English subject, but if worse comes to worse, you can always do one of the short courses. And you've got to get that tick to get your QCE. So, get a QCE. First thing, you need 20 points. Most people do them just by passing each unit of year 11 and 12. And then you also need to get the literacy and the numeracy tick. And if you can pass all your units, then you've got both of those pretty easily. For me personally, I'd never had to think about my QCE. I knew that it would be perfectly fine for me to get it. But other people who might not be so academically inclined or maybe are taking a different pathway at school, you should definitely be paying attention and speaking to your careers advisor to make sure that you are getting all of those points so you can get your QCE. If you are taking a very typical academic route, then you probably don't need to worry about it. But if you're doing more vocational stuff, or you're not going to uni after school or whatever, I definitely meet up with your careers advisor to make sure that you are going to get everything you need to graduate. So that is your Queensland Certificate of Education. Okay, and that comes from the QCEE, remember that. Now, if I go down to my ATAR, this is my ATAR certificate. Not everybody needs to get an ATAR. Ideally, everybody should get a QCE, that is your high school graduation certificate, but ATAR, not everybody needs that. Your ATAR is to get into university. If you're not going to university, you don't need an ATAR. Now, I will always be of the firm belief that everyone should at least try for an ATAR, because you never know what you're going to change your mind or whatever. Everyone should at least try, but you don't actually need one, okay? Now, as you can see, that Queensland certificate, that high school certificate, comes from the QCEE, but your ATAR actually comes from QTAC, which is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre. So even though the same subjects contribute to both your QCE and your ATAR, they are actually provided through different departments, or you know what I mean. So ATAR comes from QTAC instead. So as you can see, different. Now you will get these on the same day, usually in December. So you got the date there. So just keep that in mind. Now, these scores I got from my QCE portal, and I will show you guys this in a moment, but there is a very strong connection between QCE and ATAR, but they are still separate things. So my subject scores that show up in my QCE will go towards my ATAR. Now you might want to look here, especially Unit 1 and 2. For Unit 1 and 2, your scores aren't reported in number format. They will be reported as satisfactory or unsatisfactory. If you get satisfactory, which is decided by a threshold that your school sets, or a general threshold that they set depending on the difficulty of the subject or whatever. If you're satisfactory, that is 1 point. So when you're in year 11 and you're doing units 1 and 2, don't stress if you're not getting numbers on your MyQCE. You'll be getting satisfactories or unsatisfactories. As you can see here, I only did the one unit of literature because our school made us do both literature and English so we could decide what we wanted to do. I decided to go with English, so as you can see, I don't have anything else filled out for my literature. So your subject will stay on there because I have been enrolled in it at a time and I have gotten a point for it. It won't disappear, but it just won't be filled out because I didn't keep doing the subject. Then when you get into units 3 and 4, these are our units 3 and 4, it will turn into numbers. So we've got our internal assessments. IA1 is internal assessment 1. So that means that you do it at your school and it is created by your school. And then your EA is your external exam. So that is the one that you sit at the end of the year, and everyone in the state who's sitting the same subject as you sits the same exam at the same time. So that's why it's external. It's not created by your school. Everyone is doing it. It's not school specific. And then they will add all of your internal marks together and your external mark together to give you a final score out of 100. Now, what actually happens with that score? How do they turn it into an ATAR? So a lot of people have the false assumption that your ATAR is an average of all of your subjects. So your ATAR for me was my top 5 subjects. So that would be biology, chemistry, methods, physics, and specialist. If I add all of those together and divide by 5, which would be the average, I would get 98.4. That was not my ATAR. As you can see, 99.75 was my ATAR. Your ATAR is not an average of those final scores at all. And the reason for that is because some subjects are much harder than other subjects, and it is harder to achieve higher in those subjects. And that is why we have inter-subject scaling. So when you get that final score at the end of the year, before your ATAR comes out, before your scores come out, they put all of the scores through some sort of algorithm that gives us our inter-subject scaling. And that changes every year because it depends on how the entire cohort does. Every year they release an ATAR report. So this is the ATAR report from 2023. So this is the year that I graduated. So these results are relevant to me. So let's have a look. Let's go with physics. I got a 98 in physics. So what I would do to see the scaling of that, because they change and scale your score to make it fair. So if I go down to physics here, and I'm going to try and find 98. The closest to 98 would be, I'm just going to go with 99 here as the raw score. That score that shows up in this column here is your raw score. It has not been, you don't get to see your scaled score against other subjects. So I will never know what my scores were compared to other subjects, okay? But if we look down at physics, if you got a 99 raw score in physics in 2023, it would scale down to a 97.77, and that's not bad at all. But let's have a look at a subject that is typically easier than physics. If we go up to dance, if you score a 100 to get a perfect score in dance, it scaled down to an 80 in 2023. Because getting a 100 in dance and getting a 100 in physics, it's going to take a lot different. It's a lot different. It's much more difficult to get a 100 in physics than it is in dance. So then when your ATAR is being calculated, they go, okay, you got 100 in dance, but that's actually worth only 80. So we're going to change that to 80. 100 will still show up in your results because you did get 100. It's just when comparing to the other subjects, that 100 is not really worth a 100. So yes, things go down, but things also go up. So let's have a look at chemistry. If you received an 84 in chemistry, that went up to an 89 because they go, okay, 84, pretty good. But we actually think compared to other subjects that an 84 is actually, an 84 in chemistry is going to be better or harder to get than an 84 in another subject. So we're actually going to put that up to an 89. In your QCE results, that will still show up as an 84. However, when your ATAR is being calculated, it will be counted as an 89. Now, that obviously changes every single year because it depends on the exam and it depends on how the whole cohort does. So one year, if everybody does really, really well in biology, then the biology scaling will be worse. So it will put your score down. But if everybody does really bad in biology, then they go, okay, that must have been a hard exam, so we'll put your scores up. So there is no way to predict what scaling is going to be like. Yes, some subjects are always going to scale better. So physics, chemistry, specialists, all of those subjects, economics, they're always going to scale better than subjects like dance, some of like the more humanity subjects, music, those sorts of things, they are always going to scale down. But knowing exactly what isn't really going to matter, okay? Now, like you're not going to be able to predict it anyway, so you shouldn't worry too much about it. Now, additionally, you should be picking subjects not on how they scale, but how much you enjoy them. And I know that sounds so cliche, but you might pick a subject like specialist and go, okay, specialist scales so well, I'm not too bad at maths, I should do specialist. But you might actually really hate it. You might hate it so much that you don't study for it, you can't do it, you get demotivated, so you end up scoring really bad on it. And it doesn't matter that it scales well because you scored so bad that you could have been way less stressed over an easier subject and got the same score. So you should be picking subjects based on what you like, what is going to be easy for you, what is going to give you a good time, rather than what is going to scale well. If I wanted to get an even higher ATAR, I would not have picked biology. I would have picked, like, I don't know, something else, not biology. But I wanted to do biology because I enjoy it. It is relevant to my career. I just really like it, so I picked it. And yeah, my ATAR could have theoretically been better, but I don't care because I chose to spend those 2 years doing a subject that I enjoyed. You guys will be doing this for 2 years, okay? So make sure you pick subjects that you do enjoy. Now, that is the inter-subject scaling. But there is actually something else that we need to consider, and that is the intra-subject scaling. I've just called it that. We don't know anything about how your exam results scale in an actual, like within the subject. But it definitely exists, and I'll tell you why. So, as you can see, for my external exam, I got 49 out of 50 for specialist, okay? 49 out of 50. If that were truly a raw score, that means I would have got 98%. That is literally impossible because I couldn't answer 2 questions. 2 whole questions that were worth like 6 marks each. I couldn't answer. I tried, but I definitely didn't get an answer for them. So that's minimum 12 marks that I definitely lost, okay? But I still got 98%. That is not true, okay? So that means that within your subject, there is intra-subject scaling, but you will never see that. So your raw score is technically not your raw score, but it is in terms of inter-subject scaling, and it is only the external exam that this is relevant for. So what it means is that I was in very close to like the top percentile of students for specialist maths. Even though I got heaps wrong, I was still very close to the top, and that's why I got the 49 out of 50. For chemistry, I got 50 out of 50, but I definitely messed up a question. So it's not possible for me to have gotten 100%. That is literally physically not possible. I did not get 100%, but I still got 50 out of 50. And that means that I must have done, amongst all of the other students who sat chemistry, amongst the top. So I got a 50 out of 50, even though I didn't get 100%. So when you're in your exams, especially if you do more difficult subjects, don't panic, okay? Don't sit in your specialist exam panicking because you can't answer 2 questions. If everyone else also can't answer those 2 questions, you will actually do very well. If everyone else can answer those, then that sucks for you. But just don't let it get to you. If you're sitting in that external and you're going, okay, I can't do this, especially if you're in a harder subject, because your raw score is not actually a raw score. So there is some form of subject scaling like within the external exam, and that raw score that they give you is then scaled against all of these other subjects to give you a fair ATAR. Now, how do you actually get an ATAR? So I probably should have said this in the beginning, but your ATAR is used nationally, so every state has one, but you're only competing with the people in your own state. So because obviously education is state-based, so yes, your ATAR applies to all states, so I can use my ATAR to apply for unis in Melbourne, but I'm only competing against Queensland students for my ATAR. Now, it indicates your position relevant to other ATAR eligible students. Again, it is not an average of your score, it is a position. So 99.95 is your highest ATAR possible. So I think that's like 30, 40 people. Those are going to be the top 30 or 40 people. And then 99.8 or 0.9, will be like the next 30 or whatever. So it is not an average, it is a ranking. So if you get a 99.95, you're amongst the highest scoring students. If you get 30 or below, unfortunately, you are amongst the smallest or like the lowest scoring students. If you get an ATAR below 30, they actually don't tell you what it is. They just say it's below 30. Now, how are you eligible for an ATAR? Because this is different from being eligible for a QCE. To be eligible for an ATAR, then you need to complete 5 general subjects at a unit 3 and 4. So for me, I did 6. I completed them, got my ATAR. You could also do 4 general subjects plus an applied subject. So you might do biology, English, modern history, dance. So those are 4 general subjects. And then you might do essential maths. And that would be an applied subject. But you've still done 4 general subjects and an applied subject so you can get an ATAR. If you do only 3 general subjects, those who do biology, dance, and modern history, but you do essential maths and essential English, you won't be eligible for an ATAR because that is 3 general subjects and 2 applied subjects. You could also do 4 general subjects and then a vet qualification or a certificate at 3 or above. So if you do 4 general subjects and get a Cert 3 in criminology, then you're eligible for an ATAR. Now, the most common way of getting an ATAR is to just do the 5 general subjects. You can do 6 as well. I'll get to that in a moment. Or you can do 4 general and an applied, or 4 general and a Cert 3. But at a bare minimum, you must be doing 4 general subjects and then something else. Easiest way to do it is 5 general subjects. Now, what about me? Me and many other people out there, I actually did 6 general subjects. What does that mean? doing 6 general subjects gives you a little bit of a buffer, and most schools make you do 6. If you do 6 general subjects, that means that only your top 5 are counted. So that means if you severely mess up in a subject, it's okay. You've got that safety net there because only your top 5 will be counted. So let's go back and look at my scores here. My top 5 were biology, chemistry, methods, specialist, and physics, okay? I always knew that those would be my top 5. My 6th subject was English. I only did English because you have to do English to get your QCE, and you have to do English to get into uni. That's the only reason I did it. If I had a choice, I wouldn't have done English. But I knew, based on my previous results and my entire schooling life, I knew that I would score high enough in my other 5 subjects, and my other 5 subjects scaled very well. So I knew that no matter what score I got in English, it would never count in my ATAR. It never would, which meant I only had to pass English. So that means that you can take a bit of a step back and go, okay, I'm going to chill on that subject. So for me, I literally refused to do any English outside of class time. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I didn't spend any of my time on English because I knew that I could pass it. And I knew that it would never go towards my ATAR. So I just didn't spend any time in it. Now, that only worked for me, and I cannot stress this enough, that only worked for me because I knew that I was going to do well in all of my other subjects, and my other subjects scale very well. If you aren't doing such high scaling subjects and you're maybe doing English, modern history, business, ancient history, etc., then English is on par with the rest of those. So I don't recommend then picking one and going at no. So only pick one to not try in if you are so confident that you're going to do really well in everything else that you'll get a good ATAR regardless. Otherwise, you should be trying in all 6 subjects because that means if you flunk one of the externals, you do have that safety net and it will save your ATAR. So doing 6 subjects is good. You don't have to, but it is good because they will only count your top 5. Okay? So, to be eligible for an ATAR, you also need to get a C or higher in English. Your English result will only be included if it's in your best 5. So as I said, to get an ATAR, you need to do English and you need to pass English. That's the only reason I did it, because I knew I couldn't get an ATAR without it. Okay? Now, I believe this could also be an applied English subject, so it doesn't have to be general, it could be applied, but you would still have to do the 4 general subjects to get it. Okay? Hopefully that is all clear, and we've got our scaling results here. So what I'm going to do now quickly is I'm going to show you all of the different portals and all of that, because you actually get all of these from a different thing. So to get these results here, these ones I've highlighted where you can see my subject results, you get those from the My QCE, and you go to the student portal login. That is where you get, oh, okay, it's not working right now. I know this is working though because I literally had to log in last night to download this certificate to show you guys. But you get your QCE certificate and your subject results from the My QCE student portal. You get your ATAR from the QTAC ATAR portal. This one in here. Okay? So it's different. You get your QCE and your subject results from the student portal, and you get your QTAC from the QTAC ATAR portal. But wait, this is different again from where you apply to university. You apply to university at the QTAC's application portal. So there are 3 different portals that you need if you want to go to uni. You need the My QCE, the QTAC, and the QTAC application portal. Now, your careers advisor and your teachers should help you set these up at school. So make sure that you've got the 3 different portals because you access your results differently. Now, the last thing I want to show you just quickly is just with your ATAR and all of that. So I picked Bachelor of Nursing at 3 different unis, and we just compare our entry requirements. So at UQ, it says to do nursing, you need to get a C in an English subject. So that is important to consider. You must do English. It says that it is strongly recommended that you do a science, but you actually don't have to do a science. It's just recommended. So the only prerequisite for nursing at UQ is an English subject that you pass. You also need an ATAR of 80.6. If you were to go to USQ to do nursing, you need to get an adjusted ATAR of 65.6. And they also say that you must do English. Now, similar to UQ, it says it is recommended that you do a science and it's recommended that you do a maths, but again, you don't actually have to do it. You just have to pass English and get that ATAR. For Griffith, their ATAR for nursing is 72. And they say that you also must do an English. So all of these unis have the same subjects, they just have different ATARs. Different unis will have different ATARs based on the demand. Now, it is very important when you apply for QTAC to be looking at the code. You need to put that code into QTAC. So for Griffith, you would look at this code here, put it into QTAC and apply. For USQ, your code would be Toowoomba is that one, Ipswich is that one, external is that one. So we have different course codes depending on what campus you're applying for. If we look at UQ and we go to how to apply, we have a course code here. So all of these have different course codes and you need to get them off the university websites. Okay? Now there's one last thing that I originally wasn't going to talk about today, but I think it is worth it. And that is adjusted versus unadjusted ATAR. Now, this ATAR that you receive from QTAC, this 99.75, is your unadjusted ATAR. So that is my purely, I got a 99.75. That is what I got, honestly. Now, you can also have an adjusted ATAR. And an adjusted ATAR takes into account any circumstances that may have affected your ATAR, and they give you bonus points. Now, you will never see these bonus points. And different universities do different things. However, there are a couple that all universities do. For example, if you live in an MM2 to MM7 area, which is also relevant for medicine, and I will be making a video on how to figure that out, you get 2 ATAR points for being rural. So that means if I apply to, I want to go to Griffith Nursing, which has an ATAR of 72, but I only got an ATAR of 71, I get 2 points for being rural. So even though I never see my ATAR changing, my ATAR will actually bounce up to 73 and Griffith will go, okay, she got a 73, she can come in. Even though I only got a 71, the universities consider it to be a 73 because I was disadvantaged by being rural. You get 2 points typically if you do a language, if you do specialist, if you've had some sort of disadvantage in your life, so you might have a medical disadvantage, you might have had family circumstances, you might have had some sort of circumstance that affected your ATAR, you can apply for these points. You need to apply for them through QTAC, okay? Now, there are some which the universities automatically apply, which you don't need to worry about. So many universities say, okay, you did chemistry, you get a point. You did physics, you get a point. What the universities individually do is up to them. But there are a couple that you can apply through QTAC, which will apply to all universities. So that is something that you definitely should look into. So overall, what we spoke about today, we spoke about the Queensland Certificate of Education, which is like your high school certificate and how to get that. We spoke about your ATAR, which is what you use to apply to university. And it doesn't matter if you don't want to go to uni, but I do recommend you get it anyway. We spoke about how there is a different portal for ATAR, applying to uni, and your QCE and subject results. That's 3 different portals. And we briefly touched on adjusted and unadjusted ATARs. We also spoke about how your ATAR is calculated and scaled. So that is a big summary of today. If there is anything I missed or anything you want me to go through, just let me know. But hopefully that helped you out if you are going into your senior studies.